So to get started off with, just want to make mention of this. Todd already talked about the YouTube channel, and we generally get asked this question again during the webinar, and it's just a common thing that someone says, is this recorded? It is recorded and will be available on the following YouTube channel. Okay, and now anything that I'm speaking to today in regards to V25, there is generally a video related to it with it as well. So if you head to this particular YouTube channel, you'll see a playlist called V25. We do these now for each release, so it makes it easier for people to pick up and play with a particular release if they haven't maybe updated for even just 12 months, but even 2-3 years. You kind of want to know what's gone in. Then we have the release highlights. We've also got a licensing series, which is for us is a first. But this will be extremely helpful if you haven't want to learn a little bit about our licensing, which is something I'll be speaking to. And then the custom variations. We've got a playlist sitting up there as well. So if you want kind of the latest stuff related to V25, it's going to be in those playlists. So V25, as I said, released in May, compatible with the following platforms. And for those of you that are using Civil Site Design Plus, we will be updating that in the coming weeks. I know that having chatted with one of the development team, that's currently being worked on. For those of you that don't know, the primary goal of this release, as I've put in there, was to update the software. Now, for many of you, if I start talking about .NET 8 framework, etc., even myself, I'm not an expert, and I expect for many of you that won't mean a great deal. But essentially, what that meant was Autodesk updated their entire collection or suite of software to this new framework, which meant that our software or our applications also had to work on top of that new framework, which meant a huge amount of work, months of work for our development team. A lot of hard work went into making sure that the software that you're going to be getting on certainly the 25 versions works and is improved from previous versions. With that, we also had to implement a new licensing system because unfortunately our current licensing system wouldn't work on the old system. So we've had to implement. Now it's critical. If those two things didn't happen, you guys wouldn't have any software. So as far as we were concerned, the primary goal was to have these two aspects implemented. But with that, our development team have also found time to introduce some new functionality and improve capability within the software. Namely, hang on, before I do that, licensing is kind of critical. I mentioned this. So if you haven't upgraded yet, when you upgrade to Civil Site Design V25 on any of the previous platforms, including Civil 3D, AutoCAD, whatever it is, you will be required to apply a brand new license key using our new licensing engine. And this is actually what it looks like on the user interface. If you're not involved with the licensing, absolutely fine. But we have provided a vast wealth of resources to help people now. If you're a subscription manager or what we call sort of software coordinator, you will have received, or that individual will have received, new keys, new access to a new customer portal. So the original, what we call Customer Center, that still exists for keys that are pre-version 2025. But for anybody that's looking at V25 onwards, you'll be given access to this new customer portal. There is a wealth of content and information found on this page up here, which you can go and have a look at right now if you want to. We've got licensing instructions. You saw that video playlist a minute ago, which gives you a few little videos on how to install the software. Very, very simple. New customer portal as well. Obviously, I took a screenshot here when there was no licenses available, but there are, for you guys that have live maintenance or subscription with our applications, you'll see your software is available in here to access and download. Okay, so you'll be able to go in and download the software. So it's just a little bit of a guide, very, very brief guide on how the licensing for version 25 has been implemented and how you guys can then access it. So if you have any issues, head to our help desk, our friendly help desk, helpdesk.civilsurveysolutions.com, and you'll be able to get some help if you've got any issues there. In regards to sort of, and I've called this key release updates because, or you could call these major release updates, but these are kind of the significant things that have gone into the software that will make probably a fairly significant difference to the way that you operate civil site design going forward. The first one was surface boundary trimming. What this will enable you to do is to trim any coded surface. So any surface that you build with civil site design, pasted, total, model builder, even the survey surfaces, because they connect with codes, you can effectively trim the surface based on those code combinations. and also apply something called boundary retraction, which is something I'll be showing you a bit later. For those that have used Model Builder since 24 last year, you'll have seen boundary retraction. And what that's doing is essentially looking for triangles of a certain length, working from the outside of your model going in. But you can apply this new retraction to those surfaces, and it is honestly, it's absolute gold. I did this for some training for a customer in New Zealand a couple of weeks ago, and rather than drawing the polyline boundary and working that way, we were just very quick process of trimming the surface, which we'll show you. Now, it's important that you see this note: Autodesk 2025 users only. And again, this is not exclusive currently just to Autodesk 2025 users. I'm sure at some point the BricsCAD users and CSD Plus users will be, certainly the CSD Plus users, will get hold of this functionality when those platforms are updated to the new .NET framework, okay? But as things stand, this particular function, or two functions, export surface and export model, as you'll see today, are only available if you upgrade to AutoCAD or Civil 3D 2025. But we'll have a look at those particular functions. They're very useful. And then really lastly, but certainly not least, this is a huge thing for us, custom variations. And you're seeing just a very brief snapshot of a custom variation, which is a layback essentially, which you can apply into the model. And we'll be applying a handful of these depending on how we go for time throughout the end, towards the latter part of this presentation. And I've kind of got a number of them, but depending on how we go for time, I might have to trim that back, or if we end up with, by some miracle, lots of extra time at the end, then we will we'll add some more in. Custom variations, for those of you thinking, well, what on earth are they? Conveniently, I have a slide for that. So they're developed using a custom language called ScriptX. Now, this ScriptX language is a language that we, or our development team, have developed, that you as users can code with. So if there's anybody here that's used, for example, AutoLisp for me is something that I used to do, or Lisp as we called it 20 years ago, is something that I used to really enjoy and found that I could get some benefit from. Well, if you've done that coding and you sort of understand how to use it, then honestly, as I found, you'll really get into the fact that you can use ScriptX. However, we're not expecting users to learn how to code to operate custom variations. As you're going to see, there is a large selection of custom variations added to the software. And if users decide that they want to do something more with these custom variations than maybe what we've offered, you can speak to us, and I expect those of us that are very keen and like to do this in our garden sheds at night will probably go away and code you something up. So people like me really enjoy writing these scripts. But the reason why they've been developed is more to do with giving the users a much greater tool set when it comes to cross-section editing. Okay, so variations, for those of you that use, a portion of them or all of them, will know that, there comes a point where they'll only do so much. Whereas a lot of these that you'll see, even in the playlist that you go and have a look at, they're like a Swiss Army knife. You can kind of use all sorts of different things with them. Keeping code positions, as I've mentioned there, is a big one. As soon as you start to add a code or delete a code from your cross-section, what generally will happen is that the other codes outside or inside will move, okay? And that's to be expected. Whereas what we've allowed for in a lot of these custom variations is giving you the option of now being able to just maintain existing code positions. So yes, do something with that code, but don't do anything with the ones on either side, unless I say. Conditional design can also now be implemented with this. So for example, on the benching in cut, benching in fill, we can essentially check depths. That's one of the many things we can do, but we can check depths. So for those of you that absolutely love intelligent sections, and I don't think there's going to be many of you, but feel that you could do something with custom variations, you're absolutely right, which is why we've developed benching in cut and benching in fill. Because, to be honest with you, if all you're looking to do is do a retaining wall, or just, as I said, some kind of benching, you can use this variation. Polylines. Now, again, training with customers recently, civil site design outside of Civil 3D does have its own alignments, but those alignments can be difficult to, just quite frankly, just simply move a civil site design alignment on its own can actually be quite difficult. Now, moving a polyline, let's just say, for example, you move a road and you've got some control with an alignment. Well, if that's a polyline, moving a polyline and adjusting it for the control of a part of your cross-section, far easier. Okay, polylines are in the drawing, you move them, resample your string, and that polyline will be reused as part of the calculation. So a lot of what you'll see allows users to pick polylines for horizontal control, or even 3D polylines for elevations. The last one, and I think for many of you, you're probably thinking, yay, hooray, we can enable and disable a variation. You'll see there's an active button that we've put, and again, you can code this in, an active button at the bottom of all the variations where you can just say, well, look, enable this one or activate it and deactivate just by unchecking. If you are interested, I would recommend you do this immediately, because even yesterday I updated one of these scripts. The download button, as you'll see shortly, I will obviously show you this in action. The download button will upload the latest design variations for you and overwrite any that are already in there with the same name. So it's unlikely we would ever overwrite yours, and by some miracle you've called your scripts the same thing. But what will happen is that ours will get updated. So if there are some little tweaks or improvements we can make, this, by the way, this won't impact any application of these variations that you may have applied elsewhere in other projects. Okay, it'll only be applied to any new versions of that variation you apply going forward. Lastly, quick mention, because we have sort of shown it here and there over the past few months, but at some point there will be a future update which will include custom chat GPT, which is now free, I understand, to users. So you'll basically be able to pop into chat GPT, which has been supplied through a link from us, type in what you're after in respect of a custom variation, and it will be able to build you the script, which you can then apply. That script, okay. This is not the. Hang on a second. No, I seem to have missed a slide here, and I think it's hidden. So you'll have to excuse me. I will show you the ScriptX editor and where the scripts are stored. Probably the most important is where the scripts are stored. Apologies, I thought I had another slide ready there. Just some quick minor updates. Again, the whole development process was all about getting our software ready to run on 25, but we have made some updates to Toolspace, which you'll see as I go through today. Sampling by Polylines, which I'm actually going to employ for custom variations, which may seem a bit like, well, you guys have already got that, but there's a significant reason why that's been updated. Grading String Manager. For those of you that have lots of grading strings in project, you can now toggle on and off the update of those grading strings to improve performance. And lastly, there has been some VG shortcuts or vertical grading editor shortcuts. I have put a QR code there, so that will send you to our blog post, and you'll get to see a little bit more detail information about those particular updates. Sampling by layer. I'll probably show you that. Well, I'm going to show this one in action, so I'm sort of going to move past this slide. But using polylines for sample line positions, honestly, is really, really helpful. If you didn't know you could do this before, well, let's just say with this improvement of adding polylines in, it's a huge step. Just a quick, I did say in the newsletter that there was going to be a quick tease of V25 point. It could be 01, it could be 1. We're not sure yet. But I probably with time, I might not get to show you. So I thought I'll pop a slide in. But for those of you that want to shift your design, that could be, and by the way, I've tried this out. It is really, really good. Your model builder edits, vertical IPs, your templates. Let's just say you change your alignment changes, your main string alignment changes, and you make an adjustment to maybe start with a minus value or shift them forward. Well, obviously, if you pull your alignment back an extra 5 meters, what you want to do is then shift everything forward 5, because you've obviously pulled 0 back. This tool is going to do that for you. Okay, even if you don't do anything with your alignment, but you do just want to, for example, shift some of the template entries you've made in the design data form forward or back by a set amount within a set chainage range, this one form will do it for you. So I thought I'd mention it now. I'm not probably going to have any time to show you during the presentation, unfortunately, but it's worth flagging. So now, just in Toolspace, very quickly, you can now directly plot long sections and cross sections. And something that I didn't spot until I was doing some training recently was that you don't get asked about sampled sections anymore when you go through Toolspace. It will literally just jump you straight to your string. You can obviously use the section list for plotting, which is fantastic. Toggling on and off sample lines. This is one of my things. The fact that you've got to go about 4 or 5 clicks just to get to turn on the sample lines for a string. I know it seems trivial, but seriously, just being able to do that through a right click for me is a really big thing. The grading string manager. I don't have any grading strings, unfortunately, to show you. But essentially, that grading string manager will pop up any second. It's gone off onto a different screen, which will allow you to determine whether or not they're updated. Which, if you are using lots of grading strings in projects and you do upgrade to your CAD platform as being 25, I'd highly recommend you use that to improve the performance if you've got many of them in a particular project. Okay, so let's have a look at this. This is a job that we've had probably around for about 12 months, actually. It's a model builder project, and as you'll see very shortly, just using Toolspace here, I'll just toggle on the triangles. Again, a really nice thing to be able to do directly from Toolspace. You'll see that we've got quite a large amount of triangulation on this particular project that we need to do a bit of a cleanup on. Now, if you head to Surface Manager through Toolspace, as I'm going to do here, you'll now see sitting in the Boundaries tab, the option to use boundary retraction. Now, I was really, really pleased to understand that, you know, we can use this for total model. Basically any surface that has a code can be applied with the filter, but even grading string surfaces. Before we get to that though, boundary retraction. I'm just going to basically check this box, and what if we put in, say, for example, 12 and click build surface, you can see that we get a large wedge of triangles moved. Now, it just so happens that the triangles in this area are more than 12 meters, but there's some very clever stuff going on with this tool, which means that it won't delete those triangles until I get to some quite very, very small length. So if I pop this down to, say, 5 and click build surface, you can see that, yes, we're beginning to lose some of the triangles that we would ideally be keeping in the model. So I'm going to pop this back up to 6 and build. Now, if you have projects which you would like to have this as a default, you can check these boxes, set this up and click set default. I would probably not recommend that because every job is going to be different. Okay. If you are doing sort of very typical kind of design and you're saying, well, look, probably 10 or 11 is probably going to be normal, fine. By all means, go and set the default around that number. But my preference is to actually not necessarily set the default, but you may find that it's of use. The great thing is that we're not just limited to this sort of nearly clean model, but not quite. What I'm able to now do is go and filter by triangle code. And one of the big things for me is when you're plotting cross sections and you've got a built model and you apply what's called a surface, not a CSD built model in the cross section plotting, but just a surface. You can, or you'll always get little bits of batter code triangulation, which you have to manually go and delete. Whereas with the boundary filter by triangle codes, I can now say what those triangles are and remove them. If I go pick triangle and then just left click in between these in this triangle here, what that's done is it's yielded the code, essentially a code combination. So the left back of curb code, which is over here, to a left back of curb code on that side. Any left back of curb code in this project will now be removed from the triangulation, which is what it's now just done. You can manually type in a code combo. So you can type in LBAT, but to be honest with you, the pick triangle is absolute gold because I can go in here, start to click the triangulation I don't want. And if there's a code combination which doesn't work, all you do is just delete that code combination from the list. Now, if you do pick, as I've just done there, where there is no triangle, it looks like there is one, but there is actually a hole there, you'll get nothing yielded. So I'll just come back into here and see if I can, there we go. And you can already see the extent of which that has done a really, really good job of tidying this up. My colleague Andrew Banton and I were just chatting not too far but before the start of this webinar about the fact that sometimes with total model, you can end up with a sort of a stray triangle on the first or last cross section that sort of just for some reason is determined to stay around in the project. Well, look at your boundary retraction or even apply filter code by triangle to give that a whirl. The other thing that, again, we were actually discussing here was just the fact that you can mask. So if you are looking at, at one side of the model required over the other, yes, you can use Model Builder to say, well, look, I want to remove the left side of my design. But you can also use use this now as an option to assist you with that, which is really cool. You can also save the style here. If you've got some different defaults that you've got for different types of projects with your code combinations, then you can save them to your common folder and then load them in. Going to just close this down. We're going to stay here because, quite frankly, by cleaning it up, it kind of works nice. It's a really nice segue to sort of talk about how you may then decide to export this. Now, I'm going to make a mention. I'm going to head to Model View here. I'm going to make a mention of something that we've had for a while, which sits in Model View, which, again, users may not know about, which is the ability to export your triangulation of your models to a DWG. Now, just give this a second to give it get loaded up. There we go. I've got transparency toggled on here, which is why it's determined to stay on every project, even though it's unchecked. So we'll just toggle this off. So you may not know this. You can export what you're seeing here as a surface, sorry, as 3D faces. I'm just going to toggle off the base surface here, not too interested in exporting that. So if you want to do this, you can go to the Outputs tab, Export. This is not new functionality. I just wanted to show you the contrast for those of you that don't have V25 or won't have it, the CAD version, or sorry, your AutoCAD or Civil 3D 2025 or BricsCAD. We're going to basically export as a CAD drawing. I've already got a folder ready to go. Export, and we'll call this Model Viewer, MV. Click Save. And we'll just wait for this to run through that process of exporting the model. And we'll just close Model Viewer at this point, and then just show you what has happened in respect of this file. So I've got Windows Explorer off to one side here, and just so you're aware, you will get your render materials or render swatches being added to the folder. So if you do run this export, I recommend you put it in a separate folder. These are important because if you render the view of this surface you're just about to see in AutoCAD or your CAD platform, you render it in a rendered view, what you'll end up with is those render materials being applied. So this is what you get. That's interesting. That's not something I expected. I'll just get rid of that, and I'll get rid of this. I'm not 100% sure where that's come from. So this is now a mesh. If I explode this mesh, I'm now provided with 3D faces. Okay, so I get 3D faces of my model exported to a drawing. However, if we now close this down, click Save, and we'd head over to Toolspace for the AutoCAD and Civil 3D 2025 users. If I keep repeating myself, it's deliberate, because if someone drops into this webinar late or watches the recording late, then it won't maybe be clear. If you now right-click on the surface that you want to export, just a quick mention, export boundary, which has always, as you've been on the ribbon, we've now added it into the right-click in Toolspace, so you can export a polyline boundary of your surface into the drawing. Export surface. Now, export surface brings up this separate interface. We get to pick the surface we want to operate with, or view, sorry, or export. We get to pick the format. So for the wily-eyed viewers, yes, there is a 12DA format, which we have had tested with some very helpful customers of ours. DWG, DXF, and a selection of other formats that you can now export your surface. We'll just pick DWG. The layer name, we'll just call this Export. Click on Set, and then click Export down here, where we're basically going to be prompted. We'll go Export Surface, prompted for a file name. Click on Save, and then once we've done that, yes, we get the confirmation that's happened, which is wonderful. And we'll just head over to my folder here, which, yes, I put the project in the same file. There it is, Export Surface. I was determined not to put it in the same folder as Model Viewer because of those swatches, but anyway, it doesn't matter. Once we've opened that up, we're actually going to get something which is very, very similar, 3D faces. Okay, and they happen to have gone on. We grab our properties here, the layer called Export. So if you're looking for something a little bit that maybe is going to separate out those 3D faces for you into different layers, look, there's nothing to stop you using the Model Viewer export option if you want. Okay, but certainly this is a very, very quick and convenient way of being able to export your surface. I'll just close this down. Well, how about the line work? So if you're looking for your line work in your drawing, and by the way, this doesn't negate the need for CAD output. You can still use the CAD output as well if you want to generate your triangles within the drawing. But there has to be, to be honest with you, there has to be an option where you can now take these, take your designs and save them externally. And this is one of the things that sort of has brought about this particular functionality, is that ability to now take your design and save it somewhere else rather than within the drawing. So we'll head to models. And by the way, if you head to CSD surfaces, you've still got export surface there. Just happens it's sort of, it'll ask you which surface you want. Same goes with models, export model, or we can right click on the surface and go export model, which either one will give me the same result. This will export in DWG and or DXF your model, which we can then export as 3D polylines, which is what we would get right now, or we can export 2D, okay, with a layer prefix. What we'll use is your assign layers layer naming convention, and then add a prefix, as you'll see very shortly. I'm going to click on set, export. I'm going to make sure I come out of that folder now. And then we'll call this export model and click save. Lovely. Okay, well, we'll open that up. And what we'll get if we head back into the export, there's our export model. Really doesn't matter where it's saved at the end of the day. It's just a DWG file with polylines, which is what we're now going to get once we just wait for this to load up. And if we just head to the properties here, 2D polyline, yes, there's no elevations on there. If we wanted 3D, we had that option. And then we've got export. I probably could have put a space or an underscore, CSD-REB in this particular instance. But that can be a really great way. And don't forget, folks, if you're using CAD, you could think about having this as an XREF. So you can export, overwrite the XREF, which is then being applied into another drawing or a different sheet, depending on how you're working. So it'd be a really nice way of kind of having maybe a bit of segregation between your actual drafted drawings, project drawings and sheets, etc., from the actual live model. Okay. I appreciate we may have had questions, but what I'm trying to do is now whittle into custom variations for not a huge amount of time. So I'm going to, unless Todd, there's anything particularly pressing.
There was one question that came up about Toolspace I thought might be beneficial for us to answer live.
Go for it.
So while you're opening, we could do it. So the question was about whether there is any plans to put the pipes into it, because at the moment it's restricted to the terrain model alignments and surfaces and road strings and network strings and grading strings. Do you want to answer that one, or you want me to answer that one?
Feel free. No, feel free to answer it. Yeah, no, I'm happy to.
So the development team are well and truly aware of it. There is plans to put it in. As to the time frame, though, I don't actually have an answer to that one. I suspect it'll probably be related to when we actually get our upgrade to the pipes module released. I suspect it'll all happen at the same time, but I think it is going to come up. But anyway, yeah, I can't give a time frame, but it is on the scope of the development team.
Yeah,
yeah. And then there's another question just popped up, which is relevant to scripts, and it's something that has been asked previously, but I'm not sure on the answer, honestly. So I'm hoping you know the answer. Can version 25 call up another script within a script? So I'm assuming you mean a ScriptX inside a ScriptX?
Oh, crikey. Yeah.
I don't know, because I don't think there is actually a load other script in the UI.
I don't think that's possible at the moment. That's a great idea. I think the right people might be listening on this webinar as well, but that's something that we may. Yeah, I can't think of how we can call another script through here.
Not that I can think of off the top of my head. At the moment.
Look, that's not to say I'm sure that isn't something that could be something that we look at, certainly, calling up another script. Obviously, getting some context around that would also be helpful.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I probably jumped ahead. But anyway,
I kind of get the idea there that it might be a case of, well, you've done one thing, now you want it to go and run that script within the one, rather than having them separate. Yeah, be interested to get some more feedback on that. There will, by the way, at the very end here, folks, there is going to be a webinar feedback. You can actually just pop that in there. It doesn't have to be the help desk or email. You can pop it in there and just tell us what you're thinking, and then we can take that away. Okay, I had very briefly the ScriptX Editor up, and for some reason I decided to then close it down. This is the ScriptX Editor. So when you install Civil Site Design V25, on your computer, a brand new program or application will be added, which is called the ScriptX Editor. When you go to open, I'm not doing a deep dive on this today, but when you go to open, you'll be sent to this location here on your computer, which is where all your scripts live. And if we update any scripts, i.e. you click the download button, these scripts will get updated. As you can see, I actually pressed that button a few days ago. Hang on, what day is it today? Yesterday. I did it yesterday, just to be clear. I'm obviously losing track of time. These, I would not recommend you open up a script and start to butcher it and play around with it. If you want to have a play around with this, just do a save as and open that up and work with that, because at least that way you've got the original to fall back on. Also, if you do happen to click download, you're only going to lose everything you've done anyway, because we'll be overwriting it. There is one thing I will mention in here. There is a log option, which we use as part of the development of these scripts. I would suggest that you do not remove the comments in front of these logs, because what generally happens is a text file is being generated for every cross-section that's being analyzed. So that's something we do during the process of building the script. It's not something you generally want happening on 1,000 meters of road, because you'll be there all day watching notepads fly up everywhere. But this is the crux of what the ScriptX Editor is about. These are being developed, as you can see, actually. That was accidental, but I've actually developed this one. My name happens to appear at the top, and different names will appear for these variations over time. If you've got one that we think is absolute gold and you're prepared to share it, feel free to, because if we think it's something that's worthwhile to all our customer base, certainly something we consider adding into our standard library, and you'd get credit for that at the top of the script. This is where they live. So if you are looking to move things around, change things, when you fire up custom variations in a second, this is where your design data form is looking. So don't try and save these somewhere else, because the software just simply won't see them. Okay. So let's have a look at how they're applied. We're going to look, first of all, and yes, it's one that I did. My colleague Shane and I did a lot of these. And when I talk about working in a shed at night time, my wife for the first time sort of said to me, "What is it you're doing?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm coding scripts." So I'm still married, fortunately, but I did really get into writing these, and still do, to be fair. So I've already got some applied. And what I'm going to do is just look at some 4 comments that I've put in here, because I'm going to apply these different variations depending on how we go for time. And just show you how they're implemented. Okay, so the first one is a layback. Now, to add variations, you can, as probably most of us do, click on the plus icon, but you can just double click inside the design data form. Custom variation will be at the top. And we've done that because I think a lot of us felt that if we don't put it at the top, people won't notice it. Whereas this will hopefully invite more people to explore. Now, on the YouTube playlist that I showed right at the start for custom variations, a lot of these have individual videos, so you can sort of see them in context, hence why I'm not going to do a particularly deep dive. But the one thing that I've just forgotten we were going to do before this is to actually add the sample lines in by layer, which is something that's really important. I will come back to this in a second, but this is the one we're going to be looking at first, layback crossing. I'm looking at my notes thinking, why have I skipped this? Sampling. I'm going to turn on the sample lines, just using the right click here. Very, very convenient for the string. Now, what you'll find is with a lot of our custom variations is we're going to add extra sections on your behalf at nominated spots. If you can imagine, for example, this layback, you would have to do something from here to here. There'd have to be a sample line at this spot, maintain the width from here to here, and then basically check the variation back in again and put it all back to normal, which with linearly vary is, I think, six linearly vary variations. And then the footpath is another 3. To make those changes, most of the time we're going to add in extra sections for you. But the spots where it's very important that we can't add anything in for is at the start point. If there are known points in your design along your string where you know you are going to need to make some kind of change with the cross section, what we normally do is get users to, or what most users do is go insert sections. Okay, and you manually go and pick those particular spots. Now, previous to version 25, if I go resample sections, you had the option to use layers. Now, my colleague Todd showed me this one years ago, because Todd, if I'm right, used to use this one all the time for for when you're working at Manningham. Is that correct?
That is very correct. It was even before Manningham. And if it had done the polylines, it would have made my life so much easier.
Yes, fantastic. Yeah, look, previously you can pick lines and arcs, and it will find the end of the line or find the end of the arc and add a sample line at that point. Now, if you're doing lots, for example, and you want to make sure that your design constraint gets projected to exactly the corner of the lot, well, imagine if you could just say to the software, I want you to sample the vertices of the lot within a set distance and have those picked up, meaning that when you project a constraint over to the edge of the lot, you'll get it at exactly the right spot. You won't end up with these gaps where you've tried to eyeball it. Well, in this example, I've got a load of driveway crossings, just as polylines. So what I'm going to do is go and pick the layer called driveway crossing, get it to search 10 meters left and right of the center line of the road, which is here. We ask a couple of questions here, which at some point we'll probably look at changing, but do you want to add these? Well, yes. And do you want to add the original ones that were here, which are every 5 meters? Well, yes, I do. Apply and exit and click OK. There we go. So not only has it just done that there, but it's also done up here as well. So for those of you that are kind of new to this, new to design data and cross-section editing, if you want to change a template, or if you want to apply a design variation, you can only do it where you have a sample line. And what I've just done is use the polyline or the drafted line work to apply those sample lines, which is what I should have done before heading into the design data form. The only one that I need really, crucially, is this one. As long as I've got that start chainage in the place where I want it, then really the rest are going to come out in the wash, which is what you'll see now. Design data form. Variations, just double clicking the word variations, which is better off doing it this way. Custom variation, modify layback crossing. I'm going to show you how this works. Click add variation. Now, if you're fairly new to the software and you've used these picker tools, what this will do is it will find the nearest previous sample line. So if I did happen to click this picker tool, did not have sample lines located at these spots along the design, if I'd have clicked here, it would have looked for the nearest previous sample line and given me that chainage, which is that there. Okay, so if you've ever wondered what those picker tools are doing, they're looking for the nearest previous sample line. Now, if I click on this spot, because I have a sample line right there, it's yielded that chainage. When you use this particular variation, you maybe think, well, I don't know the end chainage. Okay, yes, I've got a sample line there, which is super convenient. But if you don't know that, you don't need it. What I can actually do is just type in a number that exceeds the length, the total width, sorry, or length of my driveway. So I can just pop in 100. I could put in 140, quite frankly, because all that software is going to do is as soon as it's used my transition and crossing lengths, it's going to terminate the variation anyway. Now, cross-section is incredibly important when we're looking at this particular variation, because otherwise it will be utterly meaningless. And I'm just going to turn off this secondary surface because it will just sort of get in the way with respect of the exaggeration. Let's just use the picker tool, pick the nearest available sample, which is there. I've deliberately displayed the codes at the top so you guys can see what it is that I'm referring to here. And actually the cross-section will put this all in context. So what we're calling layback, for those of you that are in the US watching this, I doubt you're up, but watching the recording, we actually have a couple of predefined versions of this. I want to say ADA, layback, and there's a 20-foot driveway crossing as well, that have been preset with values that are more in keeping to what you may be looking to apply. So it's just worth mentioning. We're going to take the LBK code, which is this code here, and we are looking to basically, this is going to form this layback behind the invert. So the height of this from the invert code, and bear in mind there's a code already there, but from the height is going to be 60 mil high, and we're going to go back. I'm just going to adjust this to 600. Now, the code that is in between the invert and the LBK is this one here, and we're referring to that as the lip code. And you can see at the moment, that's going to be relating to the top of curb code, and that is going to become a 0 height and 0 width. So if you just simply want your gutter down to the invert, and then your layback behind 60 mil high, 600 back, you can just leave that as 0. I'm actually going to adjust this because where I'm based in Sydney, I'm sure for many of you, we actually have, in some cases, we do actually add a 30mm lip that is applied. So that top of curb code is going to be 30mm across and 30mm higher than the invert. Now, in regards to the transition length, this is saying, well, look, to get to this particular shape that you're after, how long do you want this to, how wide do you want, or how long is it going to be? So these taper widths, I'm just going to be setting as 1 meter. The crossing length, you do need to know this. You can't pick this. I know that it's 7.6 meters wide. The transition back to a regular curb is going to be 1 meter. Then we have some really cool options. Okay, what happens now? Traditionally, when you add a code in or move this code here, what happens to your footpath or the code that's sitting here? Well, that also moves because we maintain the section width and slope. So in this pull down, we say a number of different options. Now, traditionally, change offset and hold slope means, hey, keep that 5%, which is what it would do normally. But obviously, if I'm moving this back of curb code back, I want you to adjust the footpath code with it and shunt that back, which is what would happen normally, which is what I'm going to leave on. I'll show you the other options in a minute. I'm just going to go add update. So for those of you that have used linearly vary, okay, this is what happens to the footpath, and we'll talk about how you can resolve this in 1 second. Now, if you are using this variation, I highly recommend that as soon as you run the variation, you click this button up here. If you haven't seen it before, it's a very basically it's going to add in or this custom variation is going to add in extra sample sections for you, okay, at spots which are defined based on these lengths. You don't add them in. For that to happen, we need to add those in retrospectively once you have run the variation. There are a few variations that work this way. So as soon as you run it, run recalculate to ensure that the extra sections that we add in the background are added in. And that will give you that clear and correct definition of the way that your variation is applied. We'll just quickly open up Model Viewer. Wow, we are racing through time here. I've actually got an alarm set on my phone, which you won't hear, but just to ensure that I don't go over time, but I'm going to have to rein it back a little bit with the amount of content that maybe we've got to show. Even this one can take a little bit of time to unpack. Let's have a quick look in here. Where are we? I haven't updated auto model, have I? Would have been helpful if I'd have run that process. We'll update the model, and in which, there we go. So that is the layback being applied. So we've got that 30mm lip, 60 high, 600 back. With this variation though, I'll just move this over. And this is where custom variations come into their own. We can sort of, we've preset some options for you. So hold, offset, and change level means, and current level, sorry, means keep the footpath where it was originally. Don't change the footpath, okay? So hold the offset and the current level, which means that that slope is going to adjust. So let's try this one out, add update. You can see the cross-section update as we do this. It's maintained its original position, maintain its original offset. I just need to update the model. And we'll now get that update. So I've now got I've got a very steep slope now being applied to the footpath. The other option we've got is to hold offset and the current slope. So maintain that original, what was it, 5% slope or whatever it was, maintain that slope. And obviously by doing so, adjust the height of the footpath. By the way, this transition is happening over the course of that layback width, 1 meter. So we'll try this one, add update, cross-section updates. So maintaining 5%. And then obviously we've got a height adjustment on the footpath, which is staying where it is. We'll update the model, and then we'll just show you the last one. There's the elevation adjustment because we're maintaining that 1 in 5. Now, if you don't want 1 in 5, you want, say, 1 in 3, you can use this last option, hold offset and specify slope, which is where this number comes into play. If that's the case, we click add update, and then the 3% is applied instead. I might need to run a recalculate on that because that hasn't given me an exact number. I'm going to click recalculate. It's the first time I've ever seen it not yield quite the right number. And we'll add update that. Could just be the cross-section needs a refresh. Just cycle, there we go. So there was a bit of a cache going on with the cross-section window there, which is why I've gone back to that cross-section. and it's now saying 3%. Okay, so just a bit of caching going on with the value of the text that was in there. So this is an example of how laybacks, you can use these, by the way, to actually have, you could have your layback matching all the way up to the footpath. You can use these on pram crossings, which we've done as examples elsewhere. But also with the driveway checking in August, we'll do a driveway check-in webinar. And you'll be able to check your driveway, but instead of now having to form that layback shape with a shape in the driveway checking, you can now just basically touch onto the end of your real layback that you've actually modeled and do the driveway checking that way. Failing that, you can actually run the check, determine if your layback is going to be the way it should be, and then apply it retrospectively like we're doing here. I'm going to show, I think, out of fairness to my colleague Shane, who has done some absolutely fantastic custom variations. I'm going to pop in 2-in-1 here. I'm going to add an offset centerline and then use min-max grade or restrict the grade or slope of the left side of the design here. This is really good because if you've used design constraints, great. But what if you had a form which said, well, look, through this chainage range, I'm limiting your slopes to -2 and -5%. And if they fall out of that, the software goes in and adjusts your cross-section for you. Really, really good. Yes. So, and as I said, we've got that playlist, which people can go and explore these in more depth if you'd like. So let's go and put in the offset centerline with max grade, min-max grade. Really, really good. This. We'll use this road as an example. So if you are experiencing some issues with drainage, grades, etc., and you're looking to have your centerline adjusted with an offset, you can now do this using this one variation. Custom variations. We're going to have to do another webinar on this. Add offset centerline. I was really hoping to show you dish through intersection. That's an absolute, honestly, it's a cracker, putting in appending a dish through an intersection. Nearly clicked download scripts there for some reason. Add variation. And all we're going to do here, this is very much like a Swiss Army knife, is say between, say, -1,000 and around 220. And we'll make sure, we're already in that zone now. What is the new code that you're going to be calling? The software knows if you're going to go left and right, by the way. Very, very smart. So it's going to put an L or an R for you, but it's going to create a new code, which will be LCL or RCL. So we're going to go to the left. The width control for this, as you can see, we're giving you all sorts of options. You can use an alignment, you could use a polyline, or in this case, we're going to use offsets. If I use a positive number, this offset centerline is going to go to the right. If I use negative, it's going to go to the left, which is why it knows very cleverly through the script. We've said if you get an offset that's to the left, then add an L. So we're going to pop in -1 here. -1. Then what do you want to do with the elevation control? So as you can see here, I can actually adopt the elevations of a profile string. I can set the slopes for this extent, this new segment. In fact, what we'll do is we'll try a couple of them. If I use extend crossfall, the profile string option is left blank. We can't conditionally hide variation content or variation cells at the moment. So at the moment, if you do pick something, we can't gray the irrelevant cells out. So we can ignore profile string. If we were going to use set elevation or set slopes, it would expect us to pop a value in here. Okay, and that's not the case. What I'm going to do is add extra sections to give me some nice definition, and that spacing of 2 will be applied, and click add update. Now, for those of you that know anything about civil site design, you'll know that when you add an extra code pair in your template, the subgrade definition needs to be applied in the template. So I've now created a new code combination from CL to LCL and LCL to LEB, something you would now go into the template editor, edit this template, and update your subgrade definition for those 2 zones. But what you can see, that's now pushed, and if we hit auto model, it's now pushed that 2% across by the required 1 meter. But crucially, this is what I was saying before, maintained all the other codes. I haven't had to adjust anything here. Okay, this code is currently being positioned on a profile string. Okay, so I want that to stay where it is. However, with this, I've now got the option, if I decide to maybe say set slopes, and maybe we'll go 3% start and end. You can obviously use this to transition. You could apply this in multiple stages to take you from a start offset of 0 to an end offset of 1 and decide how you're going to manage that, and then continue through, and then use a third entry to take you back to sort of terra firma, as it were, back to the original. That is just a simple explanation of how that variation works. In combination with this next one is really, really valuable. Honestly, folks, if you're wondering why there's set code alignment, set code to polyline, and set code to surface, and you're thinking, well, hang on, don't they already exist? Yes, they do. But some of the things you can do in here, for example, you match to a boundary and you want to bring the footpath with you at the surface, you can do some of this. Some of these are just absolute gold. Have a look on the YouTube playlist to see how some of them work. Even just raising and lowering a code. I'm going to get carried away if I don't stop. So what I'm going to do is use min-max slopes. Please click download scripts. This was updated yesterday with a bit of a tweak. Okay, bit of an improvement. Please click download scripts as soon as you start the software. And make sure that that is updated to yesterday's date, I would expect, or in fact, whenever it is, it'll be a requirement that you do that. This is really, really good. So I decide, right, okay, so this code is currently being controlled with a profile string. All right, now I'm going to head down to chainage, where are we, chainage 70. I decide that really, yes, I've added my offset centerline, but this left side needs to have a minimum and maximum slope. So maximum slope, say -3, and the minimum, say maybe -5. There are certain areas where clearly I'm outside that range. So you maybe apply a design constraint and then you start to adjust your profile string. Well, if I now go in here and pop in -1000 to, I'm just going to say to 200. I haven't got time to do this the whole way through. We're going to adjust the left edge of bitumen, which is being controlled by a profile string. So you need to make sure that this is probably one of the last variations you add, because it'll do all of this work above and then adjust the left edge of bitumen. I'm going to pop in minimum of -5, maximum -3. Click out update. Because that was obviously outside that max grade, I've now brought that up to -3, and conveniently I have a cross section written down, because there's nothing worse than cycling through cross sections while everyone gets a little bit sick watching me do that. Let's have a look at this one. This is, by the way, this is where the active button comes in. Uncheck that. You can just update and see what it was doing before. So as you'll see here, yeah, way too steep. Okay, I decide, well, actually, that particular chainage range, yep, 5 is the slope that I'm after here. And then that will bring it back up to 5. So you can see, whereas I'm scrolling through now, I'm at 5. Clearly, there we go. That's within tolerance. Okay, within that range. Once I begin to jump outside of that range, which is 215, because I'm 200 here, you can see that that slope has not been adjusted. I had about 5 to show you folks. Those 5 are the trim codes. Unfortunately, dis through intersection, I think we still need to update with the video. Trim codes, possibly the benching, because I thought I was going to run out of time. We're not, sorry, I thought I was going to have more time. I don't think we really, unless I've got any major questions, I'm hoping this is just a bit of an eye-opener for people to start having a look, start to see what you can do. And also, crucially for us, just give us some feedback. Okay, so that's a case of, well, I've got a particular script which I think, or I'd like to apply something with a script, even if it's what one user said, script within a script, or, runs multiple scripts, or custom variations, I guess, then let us know. It would be great to begin to get some feedback once people upgrade. And then if you get some thoughts or ideas, again, yeah, let us know. I'm going to hand back to you, Todd.
One question just come in that I think is a really good one. They want to know how to turn off the tool space if it's on.
As in, it's a palette, so it is.
You can just close it.
Right, yeah, it is. It's a CAD palette.
I think they're asking if it automatically shows up all the time.
Okay.
Which is right where Jonathan's going now, which is if you right click on the name and go Toolspace settings, there's an option in there about when it comes up. Load Toolspace on opening of all civil site design projects. If you don't want that to happen all the time and want to do it as required, then you untick that. And then the very first button in all the ribbons is the Toolspace to turn it on and off. Oh, sorry, to turn it on. Um, I just thought that'd be a better one that maybe everyone might want to know the answer to. So sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Jonathan, but I thought it
Oh
was
no,
a
it's
really
good.
good question to answer.
Good. Just I'm going to make mention of it because I know there's a couple of users in the room. Firstly, CAD output. This you're actually looking at V25 or some of what's in the next release. Output with curves. So if you are getting some issues with the curvature, obviously we've now got export model. So you know you can use export model. Output with curves means that by default now you get the curves being drawn with lines and arcs and tangents. You uncheck that, you'll basically get chords for 2D as well as the 3D.
But
And
Jonathan,
go on.
is is that in the beta?
It is.
Thank you. I don't think I remember seeing that yesterday
No,
in
no, no.
training.
So it is there. And one other thing, because I know that one particular user, I think is possibly still in the room, pipe draw settings now has the option of using by layer as the color, which that may seem trivial to some of you, but seriously, that is a big deal for many people that use by layer coloring for the pipe drafting. In civil site design. So it's just one or two things. And obviously we've got the shift chainage option, which is a huge thing for I think for a lot of people being able to move their design, model builder edits, cross-section edits, etc.
I was just going to say your color on the pipe thing has got a very overwhelming positive response.
Yeah. Oh, good. Good. Yeah. Yeah. So no, that's in a forthcoming release, and you can see it's
Yeah.
already there, and I'm using it. So yeah, of
Yeah.
huge value. I know
The second question just threw in then was, is that current? No, it's in the beta
no,
release, so
beta.
it will be
Yeah,
coming very soon. But
it
it's
will.
not quite yet out for everybody, but it is coming. Hold your breaths.
Yeah. Lovely. All right. Well, in that case, I'll just bring that last slide up again, unless anybody's got any other questions. But Todd, if you don't mind,
No.
I'll just quickly speak to the Thursday the 8th. There's a QR code. Go ahead, register for that webinar. We will use the layback function, probably not to any great extent, but it will exist as part of this variation. Let's put it that way. And also, I'm probably going to be using the new custom variation match to surface to show you how you can do a lot of the cross-section editing now and then apply the driveway checking. Um, and getting a model which looks to resemble what it is that you're checking rather than sort of checking and then having to go away and doing all the manual work, the hard manual work. So get yourself registered for that. We'll be doing some interesting things with the driveway checker.